The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a hoop ball presentation. We do not have time to waste on today's podcast. We have zero time to waste. So I'm just going to tell you, I'm Dan Besbris, at Dan Besbris on Twitter, and I want to get straight into our discussion with my old buddy. Let's roll right into it. He's getting the red carpet treatment today, ladies and gentlemen. Former co-host here on Fantasy NBA Today, back as a now weathered guest of the podcast beat, my good buddy Neil Rochlani. What's up, man? What's going on?
How you doing, Dan? Great to be back. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, see, now you get to say that again because now you're back to being a guest. How many times did I tell you to stop saying thanks for having me when you were co-hosting?
Every time except the second one, or the first one, I should say.
Well, it's a distinct pleasure to have you back. You and Adrian Benjamins, who also co-hosted this podcast, you and Adrian have been rocking along on the box score breakdown for about a month now. NBA season is like 32, 33 days young. You're a podcast vet. You're doing 5 shows a week. It's a pretty good grind, isn't it?
It is a really good grind. It's great to have Adrian there because I am like half asleep by the time the show doing the games. So, he's just getting me all pumped up with his excitement. And it's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to do the show. I've had a chance to get some other guests on there, too. I don't know if you've heard Chef has been on there along with Eric Ong's been there as well. So
love those guys.
Getting to know more and more hoop ball people, which has been fun.
Yeah, it's been really cool, actually, to be kind of on the other side of that wall, to be able to be a part of helping you guys create this thing and then sort of watching it take shape over the month or so leading up to the season. And you mentioned Adrian's energy level. Yeah, he's like a human cup of coffee, which is awesome because real coffee I can't digest properly. Adrian, I can digest just fine. Did you see my tweet on Sunday morning about having to stay up half the night because of... Yeah.
I got some doctor recommendations, I think.
Yeah, I did get some doctor recommendations. One was like, I think somebody said organic celery juice, which, at this point, I'll try anything. I didn't get a chance to respond to our good buddy VP, one of our longtime listeners here on the show, who mentioned dietary fiber. I have the other IBS. I know what you're thinking about, VP. That's a good suggestion. I have the one where if you put dietary fiber into my belly, you won't see me for 2.5 hours. That's a bad idea. In fact, I found this out, and then we're going to get into some fantasy stuff because people are like, what is Dan doing right now? I found this out when I was traveling with the Bakersfield Blaze to Modesto, and one of the only food places near the team hotel was a Panda Express, which... I'm not complaining. I actually kind of like Panda Express. I think their orange chicken is underrated. I used to get, but with a 2-item combo, Neil, I don't know if you've spent a lot of time have you eaten at Pandas often or even
whenever
at all?
I fly out of Midway here in Chicago, I always get the Panda Express.
That's what I'm talking about. So what are your two, everybody gets the 2-item combo, right?
Yes, 2-item combo.
What are your 2 items?
I haven't flown out of Midway in a while, so I don't remember what options I get, but I will say that it is, of all the places in the food court, that is where I go. So I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, I'm guessing you probably got the orange chicken because that's their thing. That's their signature item. And then the other one is like, you close your eyes, you throw a dart. And so I went beef with broccoli. That's a very safe sort of, I'm an average run-of-the-mill, weird digestive system Ashkenazi boy. I figured that should be just fine. Just the 4 pieces of broccoli in that are enough to fire up my whole everything that starts from about my belly button down, and that's just because of broccoli's dietary fiber. So unfortunately, I can't add much of that. When I stopped eating the broccoli, my Panda experience became much better. I'm the opposite, Neil, of everyone else on the planet, where it's like you need to eat healthier and you'll feel better. The more synthetic the food I eat, the better it processes on its way through my body. It's very weird. I'm probably going to be dead in the next 4 years.
That is an interesting problem. I have the normal problem, which is I eat a lot of junk food, and I wish I could. I shouldn't say I wish I had your issue, but I wish I could process my terrible diet a little bit better.
I wish I could enjoy broccoli. We all have our problems at this point. All right, let's talk some fantasy basketball because that's what the folks are here to hear. We have a couple things on our docket, Neil. Because we're a month into the season now, this is what I like to call we're getting into sort of the part of the year where teams and players kind of are who they are, which is kind of cool, I suppose. This is where values are stabilizing a bit. It is where trades can be made based on what guys are doing as opposed to where they were drafted. And that's starting to happen in some of my leagues. And it's also where you can start to kind of look back even at the first few weeks and figure out what you did right and what you did wrong. So in terms of lessons learned and just how we can better ourselves, Neil, you had mentioned that you'd been sort of reflecting on the first 4 weeks of the box score breakdown and just of the fantasy season. What are some of the things you come away with so far? We can do a little bit of a deep dive here.
Yeah, so one thing I want to talk about is in my home league, my Roto League, I was really nervous about my block situation after my draft. So I made a trade in retrospect that wasn't bad, but I think I should have waited until I saw a few games before I rushed into it. And that's one of the things that's been the biggest challenge for me is I try to predict where my team is going to go before I actually see some results. And I think that's one takeaway I have from this past season.
So do you want to go into any more detail on that? I mean, you can leave team names out and stuff like that, but what was the move that you've got on your mind?
Yes, the move that I made was I needed blocks, and I had Doncic, and I traded him for Whiteside.
I don't actually think that's that bad of a move. Is this 8 or 9?
I don't think it's a bad move at all. I just think, in retrospect, I wanted to have Doncic on my team just for fun. And I knew I valued him somewhere, 50 to 75, let's say. I thought his upside might be 40 and his downside might be outside the top 100 because who knows, right? And because of that high downside risk, and I thought Whiteside was much safer and, a specialist. So I didn't think it was a bad trade at the time. I just think I could have waited and saw how my team played out because as it turned out, I was okay with blocks. So I didn't really need to make that move. So
yeah, but I mean, ultimately, I know you're an 8-cat guy, so perhaps I'm analyzing this from the wrong standpoint. As of right now, Whiteside is well ahead of Doncic in 9-cat. Where are they in 8-cat rankings? Do you have that in front of you?
I don't, but they're very similar. They're both in the 40s, mid 40s.
Oh, okay. So that's a perfectly fair trade. I think the only thing maybe where you hurt yourself is Doncic has such crazy name value right now. There's so much buzz, and for good reason. I mean, he's looked pretty damn good so far this year. That maybe that's the kind of guy who, while he might, they're 45 and 46 by the way in 8-cat, so they literally are right next to one another.
Yeah.
But it's sort of a different. How they get there is so very different that, you could take a guy like Doncic who's averaging basically 26 and 4 so far this year, and you could probably say, well, look at this. I mean, look at these eye-popping rookie numbers and try to trade up, whereas with Whiteside, you're like, he's at 14 and 15, which is sweet. He's got the 3 blocks, but his free throws have been terrible so far this year. He's kind of stepped back in that. He doesn't, to me, have the same name power if you were trying to upgrade the position, but you certainly can't kick yourself. You literally made a 1-to-1 swap. It's a perfectly fair trade.
Like you said, I did a preseason though before the season started. So, and I didn't know where Doncic would end up. I guess I just should have waited. I mean, it was fine, but I didn't really. I guess the bigger lesson, or perhaps the main lesson, is I should have waited a few games to see where I would have been in a certain category before just assuming I would be bad, because I don't know how all the teams are going to shake out or how all the players might not shake out. My projections may not be right. So it was just a little rash is the one thing.
Okay. I
don't think it was a necessary trade for my team built. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It makes perfect sense. So there's two ways that you can approach that, right? You could go the way that you went, which is, I think that the guy I just drafted in Luka Doncic has more value right now than he will at any point during the season. Like, if you thought there's a chance this guy is just going to be crazy high turnovers and the shooting percentage is not going to be great because of the NBA, and, what do we know about his free throw stuff, and what do we know about Dennis Smith Jr. taking the ball too often, and you're like, listen, I took a guy that I know 6 other teams in the league were targeting, and I bet they'll give up a pick, half a round to a round earlier than where I got him just to get this guy. And then there's the other side, which is actually what seems to be happening much more in a lot of my leagues, and that's trades that are starting to happen within the last 7 to 10 days where player value starts to crystallize a little bit. As it turns out, Neil, I think you actually made a really good decision because, they've, as of a month in, they're neck and neck with one another. But you could probably. Who are the other blocks guys on your team? Could you flip any of those guys for a different player to fill other needs?
There have been many trades made since then. So I actually no longer own Whiteside.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know. I could go on for this. I just want to talk about that main lesson that I learned from the first.
That's awesome. The way people love trades. Where did Whiteside go? I want to know the next move on your list.
Oh God, I traded Whiteside for Teague, which we'll see how that works out. I needed a point guard desperately. They were all injured, so
you make a lot of moves.
I do.
I'm jealous, man. I love trades. Those are amazing. I just like the fact that you've been able to make this many so early. I'm finally getting some going in my leagues, and I want to break a few of these things down. So let me ask you this: from the Whiteside Teague one, a lot of moves this early in the season. How were you able to tell sort of where your team was lacking so early? Did you already know that? Is this a head-to-head or roto? You said it's roto.
It's roto, and this was more. Well, it was more just positional need. I didn't draft a point guard early, and so I didn't have any good ones. And the ones I had just weren't really producing. Like at one point I was starting Rondo, so in that slot, which
that's not good.
Obviously went away. I had to drop him. I ended up and trading him for Chris Dunn. So we'll see how that works out.
Who did you trade for Chris Dunn? It cut out for just a second.
I picked up Montrezl and I drafted him.
That's fantastic. This is like, dude, you're a perfect test case here for how to operate in the trade market. You take guys who have unproven abilities and you move them for guys who have the portfolio. This is like exactly how I would draw it up. Even if Trez ends up as a higher value on the season than Chris Dunn, you flipped a guy that you grabbed off the waiver wire for someone who was drafted in the top 70 in almost every league, and an 8-cat where Dunn is presumably going to have like 3 turnovers a game, he's an even better value. I mean, that's brilliantly done. I don't even know how you managed to pull this off, but you have to trade them right when their value is best. Did you move Montrez when he was on that crazy streak where he was hitting like 90% of his free throws too?
Yeah, right after that. Maybe one game after that. And I was fair about it. I think I told the owner, don't expect this to continue. But
you felt crazy.
I'm a very just open and honest guy, Dan. Anyway, I just I needed point guards. I had no depth there. My 3-point guards were terrible. And so now at least I have Teague and Dunn. We'll see if I can just start one of those guys when Dunn is healthy. So we'll see.
All right, let me Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it works out. I picked up Harrell right when I noticed that Gortat was getting fewer minutes, and then he just happened to blow up.
Right, so when you noticed that.
At that point, I wanted to trade him for something safe.
When you noticed that Gortat sucks, is that what you were?
Well, I didn't know what his role was going to be, right? I know he got the starter position, but once his minutes they were like slipping into the low 20s. At that point, it made sense to grab Harrell, and Harrell blew up, and then at that point, I was like, I have to trade him for someone safe. So
yeah. Let me tell you my trade that I posted on Twitter, and people were fairly mixed. I have 2 of them, actually. 2 very large trades and 1 more medium trade. We're going to go over those, and then we'll loop back around to maybe another lesson learned here in the early going. Trade number 1, Neil. Well, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to give you the 2 sides, and I'm not going to tell you who went where. You may have seen it, so you might already know.
Is this 8 or 9-cat?
This is 9-cat. Actually, all of my leagues are 9-cat, oddly. No, that's not true. One of them is 11, which is stupid. Chris Paul and Joe Ingles is on one side of the trade. Marc Gasol and Taurean Prince is on the other side of the trade.
Chris Paul and Joe Ingles for Marc Gasol and
Taurean Prince. Yes, but I'm not going to tell you who went where. Roto format.
I'm going to roto format. So you mean which side would I want to have?
Yeah, which side would you want to have? And then we'll break it down.
I'd probably go Gasol Prince.
Interesting. See, I'm actually the other side. I ended up with Chris Paul and Joe Ingles because I am hoping that Chris Paul can get to like 68 ball games this year. Right? So for me, it's all about the ceiling. And that's what most of my stuff comes back down to. Chris Paul, to me, is the player that could go the highest of any of the 4 in this trade.
No, I agree with that.
He's also the most injury-prone of anybody involved in this trade.
Right.
Although right after I made it, Taurean Prince went down with this Achilles thing, but you can sort of knock that off to the side. That was before Prince was ruled out. It was like 5 or 6 days ago this trade went down. Marc Gasol obviously having a fantastic year, but he's been weird at the free throw line, and I keep thinking it's going to regress, but he's actually gotten worse as the season's gone on. So that was my thinking. Why do you like the other side? And there's no right answer in this, right? I mean, it's not like I don't think there was a fleecing. This trade was actually with friend of Hoopball and video. I want to call him Guru, who helped us design our Fantasy NBA Today Friday show, Scott Douglas. This was a trade between myself and Scott. So I don't think there's an obvious winning side, and I'm actually kind of thrilled that we like opposite sides on this trade.
Yeah, I like his side better because, I think Prince and Ingles could be a wash. It's hard for me to say who's going to be better there. I have Joe in the league. I love him, but I think Prince by the end of the season will be. I don't have the rankings in front of me. In turnovers, I don't know that well, so
he's horrible.
On that one.
He's horrendous in turnovers so far.
Who is Prince or
Prince?
Ingles?
Yeah, Prince is at 3.3 turnovers per game right
now.
now.
Okay,
yeah, it's rough for 9-cat, but I mean,
hopefully
are
those values not close then. Prince and Ingles?
Not that far. They're about 2 rounds apart. Ingles is in the 80s and Prince is at 108 right now. If you remove turnovers, then they're almost a dead heat.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I was thinking A-Cat. And I'm just worried about, one, Chris Paul's injury risk, and then 2, I think Memphis is going to be fighting for a playoff spot, so they're going to feed Gasol as much as possible. And he has not shown me any sign of slowing down. So I trust him more down the stretch than I do Paul.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I worry a little bit less about the down the stretch thing in the roto format. I want the guy that is going to be, for me, percentages were a big deal, and Chris Paul, you knew was due for a strong positive reversion to the mean because he's a career 47% shooter, and he was at about 41.5 when we made this trade. So that had to come up a little bit. He's a career 87% free throw shooter, and he's at 77%. And where with Marc Gasol, the last 3 years, he's been in the low 80s. Over his career, he's actually a 78% foul shooter. So it's not as guaranteed that he's going to work his way back up to 83. I think he probably will get closer to that than 73, which is what he's at right now. But I want my 90% free throw shooter. I want my point guard that can shoot 46, 47%. And I want my guy that has the slightly higher ceiling. That's sort of what it comes down to for me. Chris Paul can be a first-round value when he's right. And Marc Gasol, to me, is as good as he possibly can be right now, which is like 16 and change points. He's at roughly 10 rebounds after another big rebounding game on Sunday. He's averaging almost 2 steals a game, but only 0.8 blocks, so those numbers will probably flip by the end of the year. His three-pointers are fine, but he's a guy that's also seen his shooting percentage drop pretty consistently since he moved away from the bucket. So again, that's another thing. I don't know that it's coming back. Ingles and Prince, yes, I agree with you. That's basically a wash. Prince is the upside guy if he can fix the turnovers. He was top 40 the last month and change last year. Ingles is the guy that's going to sort of coast along at about top 75. So I like that these trades that can potentially go both ways. Let me give you another one. This was the blockbuster that I've made so far. That one wasn't even the blockbuster, amazingly. Here's the blockbuster trade that was actually proposed to me. I didn't put this one out there. So if you're about to think that one side is more lopsided and it ends up being mine, just know I accepted this offer. And the offer was, and you're going to immediately know which side I took, so I don't think there's a real point in hiding it. One side of this trade is Steph Curry and PJ Tucker. The other side is Kemba Walker and Josh Richardson. Again, it's 9-cat.
Yeah. I know who you took.
You know exactly who I took, and I don't know that it's that clear-cut that I won that trade.
Kemba Walker and Josh Richardson? I don't think it is that clear-cut, to be honest.
And
I really don't.
Kemba's inside the top 8 in 9-cat right now.
Kemba is 6th, I'm seeing, in a per-game basis, if I'm looking at it right.
Yes. Although we should also add he's coming off the biggest game of his career.
Yeah, right. He's coming off his highest point. But Josh Richardson could find himself, he should be shouldn't he be top 50, if not higher?
Yeah, I think he's top 50. This trade was made very, very recently. He got ejected on Sunday for throwing a shoe. A very Austin Powers-y moment for Jay Rich. But there's a weird thing going on with Josh Richardson right now. His value is tied up much more than we expected in scoring. this year. 3.1 3-pointers a game. He's over 20 points per game. The very high field goal percent that I think a lot of us were hoping for is not materialized. The 1.1 steals, the 0.7 blocks, that's not that far off, but he was at 1.5 and 0.9 last year, so that's down 0.6 combined in that department. So the question for me was, and you know exactly what side I had in this one, how much do I value the Richardson 3-pointers and the Kemba 3-pointers? Because Kemba's not a guy who's going to rocket to the top of the charts because of his defensive numbers. He's doing it with scoring at a ridiculous clip right now. And I thought, hell, you get me Steph Curry in a league, this is going to change the way I build my team because I'm sending away two of my top scoring threats. I'm getting one scorer back and one PJ Tucker. Let's not forget, I actually got a top 70, top 80 guy, 3-and-D dude that I can plug into my lineup as well. But it's definitely not that clear cut. Are you with me on the Steph side, or would you go with the two sort of proven balance guys in this one?
You made this before the injury or during right now, recently?
This is like 2 days ago. So my assumption is that Steph will be back in the next 10 days or so.
Yeah, I guess that's the only thing I would – maybe that person is discounting Steph's season value because he's worried about re-injuring himself throughout the year, once he comes back. So, I mean, if Steph had been playing every game up until now, I would say you definitely got the better of it.
Yeah.
But I just tend to worry about injury. So – and I still think, Richardson's 34th. I'm seeing, I don't know what you said. His scoring may go down as he get more players back, but his field goal percent may go up then a little bit, if he takes fewer shots. So that could balance out a tiny bit. And I also just, from like a fan perspective, I'd rather have Kemba and Josh. But yeah, fantasy perspective, I think you have a better deal.
Yeah, well, PJ Tucker is also like one of the least interesting players in fantasy basketball.
Yes, but he is fantasy worthy. And, more so than people give him credit for. So
he is, and so I'll mention this also to the listeners. As after this trade, now acquiring Tucker and sending away Josh Richardson and Kemba Walker, Steph Curry, Kemba Walker, pretty close in the assist department. Richardson obviously has the 2 to 3 assists per game, roughly over PJ Tucker. I likely make a boost here in rebounds and steals with a very slight hit in blocks. Obviously, Richardson, you lose a little bit on that front. Field goal percent is now decidedly in my favor at Steph Curry, who's shooting over 50% on crazy high volume. And that's a big deal for this team that I've built. This is actually one of the very few head-to-head leagues that I'm in. I'm very strong in field goal percent already. I'm pretty darn strong in free throw percent. This is more or less a wash because Steph is a 90-something, and then Richardson and Kemba, they're in the mid to high 80s at slightly lower volume, but together, obviously, they're more. And then my team is really bad at assists. So there was a little bit of that aspect to it where I think I'm now 0-4 in assists against all of the opponents so far. I've won blocks every week. I think I've won the percentages almost every week. I can pull up the settings actually while I'm talking about it just to kind of crystallize the thing. I've won free throw percent every single week. 3-pointers, I will finally lose this week. And I've won blocks and turnovers, oddly enough, every week as well. And I should mention, Neil, after making this trade, one of the things that people forget is now I have 2 guys drafted in the top 4 in this league. I have Kat and I have Steph Curry. That's pretty mean.
That everyone hates you in that league, basically.
They should. They should hate me. I'm going to have to find some depth, though, and there's a 3 moves per week maximum, so I got to be really judicious as I try to add depth. That's the part of this that actually freaks me out a little bit. I got to make sure that the guys I pick up actually have some kind of staying power. And finally, the third and last trade I want to talk to you about, that these are all happening for me over the last week, basically, and this one's the slightly smaller one. I actually traded away Josh Richardson in another format. I had him in 2 places, and now I have him in no places. Not that I don't like him. I just thought I could get a lot for him right now. And I traded Josh Richardson and Evan Fournier for Marc Gasol, who I brought back after trading away in a different league. This is a different league, so it's not like I traded Gasol and then got him back from somebody else. This is a different league. This is one where I feel like I won. Like the other 2 are pretty split right down the middle. I feel like I won the one where I sent away J. Rich and Fournier and got Gasol back. He's clearly the guy with the highest upside.
Yeah, that one I think is. I would take that in a second.
So I'm glad about that one. It's not okay. So there's a little bit of an is it a slam dunk kind of thing. Like maybe a team doesn't want Gasol's free throw stuff. Maybe they don't want his shooting percentage. Maybe they need a little bit of depth. But I do think I think that was the one that's a little bit more clear. And that's trades. So let's talk about this now. Let's back away, Neil, and talk about these trades that are happening from 36,000 feet. They're happening now because people are starting to trust the rankings on guys, right? Is this the time of the year where you start to believe that stuff?
Yeah, I do trust the rankings, but I think people still, honestly, people also get stuck to like ADP value a little bit still this early. So you can kind of take advantage of that, or sometimes have trouble trading because of that. But yes, you're right. I think players have their known value at this point, or at least 90% known value at this point.
So is this a time of year, Neil, for you where you propose more trades or fewer because now you either A, feel like you can't sort of get the jump on anyone, or B, you feel like now you can just make trades that benefit your team and you don't have to feel like you're getting the jump on anyone? Which way do you go?
I tend to go the former because I am a nervous person. So when I have uncertainty, I panic and I make a lot of moves like I did this season. And I'm trying to like work within that system of neuroses instead of trying to fight it. So I will not make as many trades now unless there's a clear like statistical category need that I have and someone else needs and it's a fair trade. At this point, I'm not trying to put together too many deals. I'm going to guess you're the opposite.
I am the opposite. I am petrified of uncertainty, which is what's happening at the beginning of the year. But it's funny, you and I are both like good and neurotic. We're both just sitting here wringing our hands, and you're like, I got to get out from under this thing. And for me, I'm like, okay, deep breathing, like just wait 3 weeks, find out what this guy's actually going to do, and then try to do something with it. I think that this is a weird pivotal moment, and you can, by the way, feel free to disagree with me. That frankly makes for better podcasting. I think this is sort of a pivotal moment because while values are beginning to crystallize, there might just be those select few guys left where perhaps I or you or the listener feels differently about that guy than the person they're trading with. I get the feeling that everybody feels a little bit differently about Josh Richardson than I do, which is I really like him, and everybody else really, really likes him. And I'm sort of joking, but I'm sort of telling the truth because, like, I think he's going to be top 40, top 45, but I get the feeling the people I'm trading with feel like he's a top 35, and just that little wiggle room is enough for me to squeeze out a Marc Gasol or squeeze out a Steph Curry. Obviously, I had to pair him with a top 10 guy to get there, but I don't think that what I'm doing is necessarily right. I'm just thinking that's where instead of everybody having uncertainty, now you can sort of hone in on the few guys that still have a little bit of uncertainty. Does that make sense? Am I talking out of my, the other end?
No, you make perfect sense. And what I agree with you is that there is certainty, but within that certainty, there's still a variance that different people have, is what you're saying. And that's certainly true across the board, except for maybe guys at the very top. So I think like within Kemba Walker even, right? Some people have him as a first rounder, some people have him as a second rounder. Going down the list, someone like Giannis, where do people value him? He's currently 22nd overall on 9 Cat. I would say obviously people have him valued higher, but do people have him, 15th or 5th? So I think there's still a lot of room to get some value here if you're willing to make trades. Once I see my team and I sort of like it, unless there's something that I'm really worried about, I tend not to make moves.
I want everybody else to know, by the way, that Neil helped me retool an Excel league projection sheets that I use on my roto formats. And by the way, Neil, it is magnifique. It is magnifique. This is not going to anybody. This is something that I worked on for a really long time, and then Neil actually added some formulas in there to make it a little prettier and actually run properly. I have to do less work to update it. Effectively, what this does, and yes, we're in mid-November, but this is the time of the year where I start yelling at you guys about looking at the averages in your roto format because everybody's got a different number of games played. right? I mean, I'll look at my my big money league right now, which for me is, from all of you guys, it's a medium money league. For me, it's a big money league because, as we just mentioned, Neil and I are both very neurotic. I am at 183 games used as of Sunday evening. The league leader is at 205. The lowest person in league is at 151. Most people are between 170 and 195. It's really important to know what your numbers translate to on an averages standpoint, because like if you're comparing yourself, if you're at 183 and you're comparing yourself to a team that's at 185, it's pretty easy to say, oh, like I'm 4 rebounds behind. I would pass that guy, all things being equal. But if you're at 183 and another team in your league is at 205 and you're separated by 80-something assists, you don't really want to have to like work it out and figure, okay, I got to average 4 and change assists to actually catch up with them. But you factor that into what the guys are doing on my team right now, so I have to increase the average by X number. It's better to just look at everybody's averages, and then you can say, okay, this is what I have to increase my number by. And then you can really start to work on ROI, which to me, and I think this has to be the case with you, Neil, I feel like this is one where I don't even have to ask if we agree. The ROI for trades is really what it all comes down to.
Oh, yeah, of course. And future ROI is sometimes hard to predict based on past ROI. I would say that. But yes, totally.
So how does that work for you when you're constructing trades at the beginning of the year? It sounds like you're getting out from risk. So you're looking for a return on your investment that is more predictable?
Absolutely. I'm looking for something where it's a category or positional need that I just don't have covered very well, and I'm looking for safety there. I mean, the most frustrating part when I play fantasy is having to start someone in one of the main positional categories, let's say the 5 main positional categories, that I just don't think is all that good. I don't want to have to start someone who's like a number 100 in a category.
Yeah.
And it's not because that they aren't worthy. It's just because they could fall off to 150 pretty easily, how close those are separated. So, yeah, I want to have everyone in a starting position that I think is pretty good. So, yeah, I'm really looking for safety, eliminating risk in the beginning. And then now, like you said, if I was more active, I would be looking for that sort of situational variance and valuations. So I like what you're doing. I just, maybe it's like regret avoidance at this point. I'm not sure. So,
Neil, are you sure you're not part Jewish? You sound like everybody in my family right now. So at what point during the year do you consider giving up on a stat in Roto? And it's not a punt. I think that's an unfair term, because if you're punting something you never tried, for me it's a give up. When you're like, you know what, I'm one of my leagues right now. I am 3rd from the bottom in points. I am also in that same league 2nd from the bottom in rebounds. But to me, it's too early to just say, you know what, screw it. I'm not going to even try any of these categories. But there is a point during the year where you're like, you know what, I'm starting, Evan Fournier, who I already mentioned, who was passed off in a previous trade. I'm starting Evan Fournier, who a lot of his value does come from the fact that he can get you slightly above league average in points from a guy you drafted around number 100 to 120. There's a little bit of other stuff in there. He'll hit a couple threes, he'll get you a steal, but it's not like big time across the board stuff. That's the type of guy where at some point this year, if I just decide I'm giving up on points, maybe I could move him in a package and shore up something else where the farthest I can fall in points is 2. Can I move a guy where I can gain more than 2 points in another category? That to me is like, that's where you're really starting to make some change on your ROI, is what can you lose in one department versus gain in another compared to other teams in your own individual league. The specificity of your own league is where this stuff really gets to that next level.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to your first question, I don't give up on a category unless it's really I'm at this point. So I'll give you an example too. I'm 2nd to the bottom in points in a league as well, and I'm projecting that if things turn around a little bit for my players, maybe I can get and I pick up someone at a high points category that fits other category needs and doesn't hurt me. I can maybe get to middle of the pack, and so I'm going to try to do that. I don't want to handicap myself right now on giving up on a category until it looks like I can't do it anymore, which will probably be sometime January, February, probably January.
Yeah, I agree. New Year.
And like you said, so then the ROI comes in there, because when you talked about Evan Fournier, you're not evaluating him on his actual value. You're evaluating him on taking away his points value. So you're actually, it's a less important to you or less valuable to you. So just even an even trade would make your team better.
That's right.
So
well said.
Yeah, and if you can then somehow find someone who needs points, you can get even higher ROI.
Last question for you, Neil, and then I'm going to let you get back to your day. That is, turns out LeBron James is still pretty good, huh?
Yeah. Turns out LeBron is pretty good.
No, but like
I thought you were gonna talk about my great ability to do DFS.
No. I mean, we can
talk about that.
But that was epic. Truly, the the efforts that you and I put forth in that last DFS tournament. I don't even. All right, fine, we can do that. I just
no, we go over. It's that
I'm
works. Just a guest. It's your show.
Listen, I thought it was funny that everybody was like talking about how LeBron has been in sort of cruise control mode, and he has been. And then in 2 of the last 3 games, he's decided to go. You know what? I'm going to give these guys a taste of playoff Bron. And in those 2 games, he's averaged. What does he have? He scored 95 points over those 2 games. Not bad. 18 rebounds, 12 assists. He didn't have assist very much in the win over the Miami Heat. The Heat, by the way, not very good this year. DFS. My lesson here, Neil, is that I need to practice 7-cat basketball a lot. Like, maybe I should just open up a free ESPN league that's just a points league and try to figure out how this whole thing works. I'm in there looking for guys who are like, ooh, this guy might get me like 2 steals tonight, and he's going to shoot like 4 for 8. I like those percentages. That sounds good. That crap is worthless in DFS. What am I doing? And you did the same thing. So we stink.
Yeah, I don't think I couldn't do any worse. So there's only one way to go.
Did you lose to the guy who had an injured Serge Ibaka in his lineup? I managed to beat that guy.
I probably lost. I lost to everyone. So yes, I did lose to that guy.
And you know what the best part is? I'm getting right back in the next one on Wednesday.
Hey, I put in $25, so I have good 8 weeks of donations.
Attaboy, and all you got to do is win 1, and then you can play another 5.
I really want that T-shirt. If only I knew Adrian, I can maybe be able to get one. So.
Yeah, who the hell can get a hold of that Adrian? Wait a minute. Wait, we should probably promo that again. Hey, by the way, I never told you guys, you can follow Neil on Twitter at Neil Rochlani. It is NeilRochlani. You never changed your name to at Orange Ball Neil. I'm very sad.
But that is my team name in the Hoop Ball League.
It is? It's Orange Ball Neil?
Yes.
Well done. I think I'm losing that league also. I tried a punt strategy. It didn't work, and then I just stopped paying attention. I have so much trouble, Neil, paying attention to leagues where I don't have money on the line. It's bad. It's not fair to the other people in there, but...
Here's the thing, but yeah, you don't have any pressure in this Hoop Ball League, right?
No,
I think if I lost that league, you might just kick me out of this whole Hoop Ball.
Yeah,
league.
I might cut you off the podcast.
Exactly. So I've got to really pay attention to that one.
Yeah. So by the way, folks, the next Beat the Expert contest, likely, I believe, coming up on Wednesday of this week. Beat Mike Apatria, get in the top 10 on that. I think it's going to be another 50-person league. Although if we fill this one up again, then I think DraftKings is going to bump us up to 75. So the prizes will start to get either bigger or for more people. I don't know precisely how that works, but let's keep filling these suckers up. We can keep growing our DFS engine over here. Mike is awesome. John Schifferly is awesome as well. You guys can get their stuff. Some of it's free, and I know John puts out his daily lineup advice for the premium subscribers over at Hoopball, which you can also become by opening a brand new DraftKings account, putting $10 in it, and then you get the Hoopball premium membership for free. All you have to do is navigate to DraftKings from the Hoopball referral portal. They just need to know that you came from Hoopball, and then they can tell us, hey, somebody came from you guys. Give them their free membership. So that's how that works. Neil, any other thoughts on a month of basketball gone by, or are you feeling pretty good right now?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm enjoying watching the games. In terms of fantasy value, what I'm really learning is that I'm in multiple leagues. And the leagues are very dependent on activity and on trade activity and free agent activity. So that's where I'm trying to learn, like, do I need to be earlier in some leagues and picking up guys, or can I wait, and so forth. But yeah, other than that, I'm doing well.
Anything caught your eye over the weekend? Because I know you're going to be doing a box score breakdown show late on Sunday night. We're recording this, I think, like an hour before you and Adrian record, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I will say I got very fortunate to pick up Pascal Siakam in my home league.
Nice.
And he caught my eye over the weekend because I don't know if you saw them play Chicago, if you want to call that a basketball game.
I don't.
But he, fair enough. You will not be alone. He is just looking remarkable out there. Like, it's just, I love watching players develop. And we talked about Josh Richardson earlier. He's developed into someone who's very good on the court, and so is this Pascal Siakam. And there is a handful of others, which I'm sure we'll get to on the show. But Doncic, one of those as well. But other than that, I am still trying to become a better gambler. I think I won today, so that was good.
Attaboy. What do you have? What do you have on Sunday? What was your spot on Sunday?
My spot on Sunday was maybe sure I won Orlando -3.5 over the Knicks.
Yeah, they blew out the Knicks 131-117 final score.
Yeah, I figured just on a neutral court they would be Orlando's better. So I don't know why at home they're only 3.5 points.
Yeah, there was the back-to-back thing off their blowout win over the Lakers. I think maybe there was the feeling that some rest might help. But yeah, the Knicks are really terrible, like epically bad basketball team. They stink. They stink. The only fear I would have had was, did Orlando sort of shoot their best bullet against LA? But they're actually not that terrible. I think. Does this win put them over 500? I might be missing.
They're actually
that.
not a bad team. I put them in the same category as Brooklyn. They're actually a good basketball team.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not great, but they're good. They're first place in the Southeast.
Yeah, that's true. They're
8-8.
They're a game up on the Hornets. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for the Magic. They've been particularly good at home also. They can score with the best of them, and maybe that means they're going to hold on to Vooch all season long. But one thing we do know is there's going to be a lot of Jonathan Isaac. Oh, baby. I can't wait to hear you and Adrian talk about Jonathan Isaac in his back-to-back over the weekend. Just for and obviously we'll be doing a little talking about it plenty here on Fantasy NBA Today, but over the weekend, I believe he ended up combining for 2 steals and 6 blocks over that back-to-back. He averaged a steal.
He's a special player. Yeah. We talked about holding on to him. We both, Adrian and I, think he's going to be finishing in the top 50 if he gets the time and the health. So,
it was tough, man. It was tough telling everybody to keep holding, but like, there's so few guys out there that can win you 2 defensive categories in a week in a head-to-head format, or in Roto, he could just be incredible. So, I think folks listening to Box Score Breakdown will hear a little bit about Jonathan Isaac. What else you guys got going on old BSB before I send you off?
Well, we got I don't know what's going to be on this week. I have to talk about our schedule to see what it's going to be, but it's just a nightly show of Adrian bringing the energy and his love for fantasy basketball. Neil
bringing the bifocals and Adrian bringing the energy.
Yes, exactly.
That works.
That's exactly how it works.
The Box Score Breakdown comes out every night at the conclusion of play. It is the only podcast that comes out that quickly. It's your first recap of the nightly action in podcast format, available anywhere across the internet. Neil Rochlani, Adrian Benjamin, host Neil here on Fantasy NBA Today, former co-host Neil Rochlani, and we send him off to finish his other work. Big thank you to Neil once again. We have to rip through the box scores. We had so much homework assigned to Monday evening, so we are going to focus on the key points of impact. Number 1, Mikal Bridges, 23 minutes of foul-plagued action and still had 13 1-1 with 2 steals and 3 3-pointers. He is must-own. We all figured he was going back to the bench with Trevor Ariza returning. We were following this on Twitter, so I hope you guys are following me at Dan Besbris, basically saying, look, if he's sticking in the starting lineup, this is a guy that has to be owned. I thought he was going to get dropped by people. I'm really upset that this all took place so quickly in kind of a weird, nebulous way, where, frankly, people that didn't realize he was starting because Ariza was gone are now being rewarded for picking him up in that moment. Because it looks like they're going to keep him at the 2 or the 3, and Devin Booker is going to be the point guard. We don't know if this is going to stick, but they did play better with him on the floor, and he had a really nice game. So he's a must-own guy. Get him on your team somehow. Mike Muscala, Wilson Chandler, we were watching that battle. Muscala had a nice game, but he only played 23 minutes, so I'm not buying it. Wilson Chandler did nothing in his 32 minutes, so we shuffle along. Cleveland we were watching, and they all sucked. Chetty Osman played 30 minutes. He's a guy that we should obviously keep a close watch on because I think they want him to be doing a lot moving forward. Colin Sexton really doesn't do much besides score, and he was okay in this game. This is Tristan Thompson territory right now, And the guy that I was hoping would end up playing a bunch, David Nwaba, did not. So what does this tell us? You can't trust the Cavs. Tristan Thompson is a guy you can roll with, and that's it right now. Not even Larry Nance anymore, apparently, because I guess Cedi Osman's going to get a bunch of those power forward minutes. And then obviously when Kevin Love comes back, he's another guy that you can trust on the Cavaliers side. Next items on the docket. Remember, we had a lot of homework in this thing. Indiana without Victor Oladipo, they blew out the Utah Jazz, which of course meant bench guys got a whole bunch of extra minutes. But we actually did get some decent lines from a couple of starters, too. Miles Turner turned an ankle in this game, but had 12 and 6 with 4 assists, a steal, and 3 blocks. We'll totally take that line. Darren Collison was 2/3 of the way to a triple-double. If he plays in the fourth quarter, he might have ended up there with 9, 6, and 7, a steal, and a three-pointer. Thad Young had 3 steals in this game, so he finally got into the mix a little bit with a more traditional Thadian line. Thadian, I like that, by the way. But of course, it was the bench again. Domantas Sabonis had 19, 9, and 9 in 26 minutes. And then Aaron Holiday, draft pick, had 19 and 7. Utah, man, they got to get their butts out of their behinds because they're playing not well so far the year in this season, and they got to get it figured out. They will. Give it time. They will. But Donovan Mitchell and Joe Ingles are the 2 guys that need to pick it up, and they were not there tonight. Clippers, we were watching the backcourt. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander played 29 minutes again, but he showed once again that he's basically a scoring guard at this point. He's not a passer. The defensive stats, which we need, were sort of there. He had a steal and a block, but no three-pointers. I think he's going to shoot an okay percentage. I think that's sustainable because he's getting a lot of looks closer to the rim, but he's not going to do enough to be a traditional 12-team guy. You need a special kind of format for a player of his fantasy game to really be valuable. Meanwhile, Montrezl Harrell, what a game. My God. He's probably the pickup of the year, and I didn't grab him because I was worried about his free throw percentage. That one's going to haunt me a little bit. The Atlanta side, they actually played okay in this ball game, kind of fell apart late. Trae Young had one of his weirdo games where he busted out for 25 and 17, but he still missed all of his shots and turned it over 6 times. So that was a good with the bad scenario. Dwayne Dedmon and Alex Len, they each played well while splitting the center minutes right down the middle. Jeremy Lin crapped himself the day we started to think maybe he was turning a corner. John Collins looked great in 20 minutes, and Taurean Prince is finally starting to warm up. 21 points on only 15 shots. He had 3 3-pointers, got 2 steals. This is the kind of land you were looking for when you took him in the 60s or 70s of your fantasy draft. And Kent Bazemore, he'll be fine. You know, he's a quiet across the board guy most nights. He got his defensive stats. He'll be all right. They just can't have Trae Young taking 22 shots every single night. Frankly, they could have won this game if he might have passed it even a couple more times. 17 assists. That means his teammates were actually making buckets. He was shooting a high volume 36%, and everybody else was up around 50. Whoops. San Antonio, New Orleans was not a game we were watching all that closely. It's very clear now that Derek White, Bryn Forbes, and Patty Mills are locked into a whoever's hot kind of thing, and it was Forbes in this one. He went 7 out of 8, in a losing effort, had 20 points in this game. He and Dante Cunningham actually kind of carried the load for San Antonio. I will say Rudy Gay looks like he's in a pretty good spot right now. He's playing on back-to-backs, we think. We'll see, I guess. But the Spurs actually need to run their guys out there. They're not as good this season. Teams are playing a different brand of basketball, and the Spurs slow down, shoot it from inside the three-point line thing for most of their guys is just not as effective anymore. Yeah, Cunningham and Forbes had 5 threes apiece, but the rest of the team had 2. The guys that are supposed to carry the load a little bit, they had 2. Memphis, we were keeping an eye on the Jaren Jackson Jr., JaMychal Green thing, and JJJ won that position battle by a lot. He played 36 minutes to JaMychal's 15. Green had 12 and 9 in his 15 minutes, and people are going to start looking at him as a pickup. He's not. You can't be successful in 15 minutes. There just isn't a guy out there that can do it. Jonas Valanciunas is about as close as we've got in the modern NBA, and he's at 19 minutes. So no, you're not trusting it. Slow-mo is locked in. Garrett Temple's actually playing well enough. He's right around top 100. Marc Gasol is rebounding like a lunatic this season. And it's why maybe they're bringing in Joakim Noah. And Mike Conley looks like he's starting to come around a little bit as well. On the Dallas side, they were missing Wes Matthews and J.J. Barea and Dwight Powell, so you started to see some pretty weird names pop up on the box score, getting much larger minutes than usual. The Mavs are a team that I'm just not particularly enamored with yet again. Denver, we were watching the Who Can Do the Will Barton Stuff sweepstakes, and it was Juancho Hernangomez for a little bit. He went cold in this one. We figured he would, defending Chris Middleton and Giannis Antetokounmpo most of the night. He shot just 2 for 10, but did have 7 rebounds, a steal, and a three-pointer. You could potentially ride that. As I mentioned on Twitter, and I think on yesterday's podcast, he's a guy that I have on teams where I have unlimited games to play, but in roto situations, he's a guy I've left on my bench. I just don't want to use any of my games cap on a guy that I don't think I can fully trust right now. So, frankly, if I'm sitting on a Juancho and there's a few other guys that are popping up here over the last little bit, like Mikal Bridges, you're definitely dropping him for Bridges. You're absolutely dropping Hernangomez for Bridges. There's just way more meat on that bone. There's a future there that's worth pursuing. We're seeing some more very reasonably priced guys getting dropped. I saw Cody Zeller hit the wire in a couple of leagues that I'm in. Even though he's a top 100 center, that's a tough guy to come by. To me, those guys are actually better for your team than Hernangomez because not only is there a timestamp on him, but he's not consistent. And you knew he wasn't going to score 20 points a night. So that's a little bit troublesome. And, of course, in that last ball game, we were sort of keeping an eye on everything, particularly on the Sacramento side. Russell Westbrook returning for the Thunder meant way less for Paul George, although, he'll get his shots up. He'll be okay overall. The Kings, this is the team we're trying to figure out. Nemanja Bjelica actually saw a bunch more time in this ball game. This is the first really good game Bjelica's had in a couple of weeks now, so I'm not that. I don't think I'm going for it. Iman Shumpert got hot. Bogdan Bogdanovic played well as they continue to slowly work his minutes back up there. As the Kings are getting healthy now, it's becoming a little bit more difficult to isolate the right guys, but it does appear to be, and I know De'Aaron Fox had a terrible shooting game in this one. He just got devoured by Russell Westbrook at all. But he's a guy you can use on a night-to-night basis. You can definitely use Buddy Hield on a night-to-night basis. And generally, Willie Cauley-Stein, I don't think we're there yet with Bogdan. I think you need to get those minutes up a little bit higher. Obviously not Shumpert. I think Bjelica's on the out right now. The team that I was really hoping for to see something interesting was Cleveland, and it didn't take shape. That was the game that I watched. They just got worked. So maybe, it's one of those teams where you're like, well, maybe if the game was closer, we might have seen somebody get to play enough minutes to do something. But Tristan Thompson, Rodney Hood, Chetty Osman, those are the three guys that were out there for enough, even in a blowout loss, to be fantasy useful. And Thompson was the only one of those three who actually got close to that mark. So, sad as it is to say, that's a team where you're probably just sitting on Kevin Love for another month and waiting for him to get his tail back in. And at that point, Tristan Thompson might go away. So there may only be one useful fantasy player on the Cleveland Cavaliers, with the hope that a guy like Chetty Osman can turn the corner at some point, or perhaps Colin Sexton can figure out how to pass. I mean, that's what you're hoping for. But the big news from Monday night, Mikal Bridges. He's in the starting lineup for now, and if he's in there, he's going to be fun. He's going to be fun. He doesn't need to take a ton of shots to be successful. His looks are going to be, hopefully, the good ones. On the off chance that Devin Booker throws a pass to somebody, that's a spot where he could score. TJ Warren actually passing a little bit better this year. DeAndre Ayton has actually shown a decent ability to pass out of the post. And then Trevor Ariza came back and he played well. So I think you're going to see those 5 guys start to separate themselves a little bit. And that's pretty cool. All 5 of those guys would end up being worth owning and starting in fantasy circles. It's pretty neat. That was a Monday card, and it was a big Monday card, and there were a few things that emerged from it just in terms of pickups, drops, and holds. Quick look here at Tuesday, just a short 4-game slate on Tuesday night. Toronto is in Orlando. They're favored by 6 over a hot Magic team right now. Don't discount Orlando in this game. Clippers on a back-to-back at Washington after nearly losing to the Atlanta Hawks. Now they take on the Wizards, who are in serious turmoil. The Miami Heat. Who the hell is playing for this team is anybody's guess, but we're going to be watching it, man. They're a homework assignment for you. They're hosting the Brooklyn Nets and 3-point home favorites. Portland, 7.5-point road favorites in New York. The Knickerbockers are a team we'd like to keep an eye on as well, on the off chance that any of these other guys find some measure of consistency, whether it's Cantor, whether it's Mitchell Robinson, whether even Kevin Knox, who I don't expect to find consistency, but maybe he'll surprise me and surface and do something along the way. But there are some interesting things going on. We want to watch Jonathan Isaac in that first game. That's a fantasy angle worth pursuing. We're going to keep watching the Clippers backcourt, but I think I have a pretty good feel for it right now. It's probably going to be Lou Williams, and that's about it. Going to be watching the Washington Wizards to see if anything just blows up there. There's a possibility, or maybe this galvanizes them. All the terrible news doesn't look like that's happening so far, though. Brooklyn, still this whole post-Levert thing, although, again, that's starting to crystallize a little bit. Miami, Dwayne Wade is back. What does that do to Wayne Ellington? What is Tyler Johnson's role with or without Goran Dragic? What is James Johnson's role going forward? Could he emerge as a potential sort of, as the ITL guys call it, stuffing things dude? Josh Richardson, how does he bounce back from Shoegate? And then the Knicks, as we just mentioned, I'd love to see some of these young guys get a little bit settled in, but against Damian Lillard and the Blazers, I don't know that this is going to be the right time for it. You can see Yusuf Nurkic just destroying Robinson and getting him into foul trouble pretty early. From a betting standpoint, nothing all that strong on this thing. I think maybe tiny lean to Orlando. It does seem like they're playing okay right now. Toronto just waxed the Chicago Bulls, but perhaps they're bringing a certain clout with them and are maybe a hair overvalued in this game. It's not that far off from where I would have it. Clippers on a back-to-back are slight underdogs. I think you're going to, if you have the stones to bet Washington, that would be the side, but I don't think I could do it. Miami, Brooklyn, I don't want anything to do with that. And then Portland, New York, who the hell knows when the Knicks are going to show up. So yeah, not much on this card from a gambling perspective. Quite a bit on a fantasy perspective on just the short 4-game card. Want to let everybody know before we wrap things up here on this Tuesday edition of Fantasy NBA to Date, this week's DFS Beat the Pro contest has been postponed. Our good friends over at DraftKings have noted that it is Thanksgiving week. They have told us, because they've done this many times and we haven't, that this is actually not a great week for a DFS contest. So that's going to get pushed back to next week. We'll open up another 50-unit contest, and we will obviously keep you abreast of the links and the terms and the winnings and all that good stuff as next week rolls around. We will have shows as usual this week. In fact, tomorrow we'll have Russ Peddle on the podcast with a fancy Wednesday episode. Thursday, we'll probably turn that into a mailbag show since it's Thanksgiving morning. I'm sure people have questions. That'll probably be a shorter episode, my guess. And then, of course, Friday, we'll come bouncing back from Thanksgiving, tired and stuffed. Myself and Aaron Brewski, that'll be the live show to wrap up the rest of the week. Once again, a huge, sumptuous thank you to our good friend Neil Rochlani for hopping on the pod. Please do, by the way, if you haven't already, give him a follow on Twitter at BallWithNeil. I know many of you have followed me. If you follow me, you should follow Neil as well. He and Adrian put out a fantastic nightly podcast that airs right after the conclusion of the action. So we talked about Mikal Bridges today. They talked about it last night. You could have heard good advice about him 12 hours ago. Yeah, about 12 hours ago, actually. Those fools are not getting enough sleep. Again, thank you to Neil for popping on the show. I am at Dan Besbris on Twitter. And if you have a moment, here, come on, it's going into Thanksgiving. This year, I give thanks for those of you that have given the show a 5-star rating and review. And this year, I give thanks for those of you that have subscribed to the podcast and retweeted anything related to the show and told your friends and helped spread the word and make this show as big as it's become now, because this is pretty cool for me, and I really, truly am extremely grateful to all of you for that. I know we had to rip through a lot of stuff on today's podcast, really in-depth episode on trade. This is the time of year, man, and I'm going to talk about it with Russ on tomorrow's episode as well. We're going to get into valuations on guys, trades, how you figure out buy lows and sell highs, and we'll try to set it up. All you tell me you never have trades in your leagues. Let's change that this year. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Fear not. Same schedule all week long. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.